Hello and ho, 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 everyone. Welcome to the Royals Rundown Podcast, Christmas Week edition, presented by Royals Review. I am Jacob Milham, one half of the team here, joined by my better half of the team, Jeremy Greco. Jeremy, it is Christmas later on this week. Target is popping. It was a Target traffic jam, if you will. How are things down there in Georgia?
Bah humbug.
Boo. Boo, boo, boo. Why would you say such a thing, Jeremy? Come on.
Christmas just isn't my thing, man.
Hey, fair enough, fair enough. Listen, so you can
I feel like everyone deserves to know that about me so that we can cut our viewership in half and just really keep the real diehards around here.
oh, gotcha. Yeah, really weed that out. Well, I guess if you want to find some Royals related Christmas cheer, since you're not going to find it from Jeremy, you can go look for some on royalsreview.com. The best Royals news, analysis, and commentary, all things related to the team over there. I know that we have a lot of growth planned for 2025 is what I'll say. There's some things going on behind the scenes that y'all don't know about. So we should usher in the new year with a bang. But go get your feet wet over at royalsreview.com. Jeremy, not a ton of Royals related stuff to talk about, but this episode will talk about the base running metrics with Baseball Savant that you wrote about this weekend. We'll talk about Michael Lorenzen being shopped as a two-way player, apparently, trying to make him more of a versatile, valuable player, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But first, I want to start off with what a AL Central rival is doing, the Cleveland Guardians, who they're doing some interesting stuff. You know, they just had a 92-win season. Most teams would be looking to reload, keep the core guys of that team together, and then keep it moving. But meanwhile, they're out here trading folks away. They're losing people left, right, and center. I mean, it is like, I don't know what to make of it. They trade away Josh Naylor, a big bat in that lineup. They've also lost Matthew Boyd. They traded away Andres Jimenez. They lost Nick Sandlin, Eli Morgan. And these are all choices by the front office, right? It's not like you could force a trade in MLB. They're moving all these players. Could Royals fans expect a step back from the Guardians in 2025, Jeremy?
I thought we could expect one last year. I was really I didn't think the Guardians were going to have much going for them last year, especially after the starting pitcher. I forget his name. Was it Tanner Bybee went down, or was it? It wasn't Bybee, was it?
I think it was Bybee.
Bybee, who got hurt at the beginning of the year. No, it couldn't have been Bybee. They still had Tanner Bybee, but they lost Shane Bieber for the year. So I thought that they'd take a step back, and it just didn't work out. It didn't work out for the Royals. It worked out fine for the Guardians and made it all the way to the AL Championship game. And yeah, they traded away Josh Naylor, which is, pretty big move. Won't miss facing him, certainly. But they did also sign Carlos Santana to fill in at first base for them. Carlos Santana, Royals fans will remember, was awful for Kansas City for a couple of seasons. But he was great for Minnesota last year.
Yeah, he was sensational.
So it's hard to tell what the heck is going to happen when he goes back to Cleveland. This is just a weird situation with that guy. He's 38 years old, just been playing baseball for forever, and he won his first Gold Glove last year, which was really cool.
That is cool. Good for him.
But yeah, the Guardians, I'm not going to bet that they're going to get bad until they also get to play the White Sox, same as the Royals.
It's true.
So that'll help boost their record.
Yeah. It's just a weird situation. They were 92-69 last year. They reached the ALCS. It's not like they have to tear it down to the studs and keep it going. This is just another example of that payroll stuff that you're talking about, Jeremy. They already had one of the lowest payrolls in baseball, but they're shedding even more salary, which is just frustrating. It has to be terrible for those fans.
Yeah, it's awful, and it's, like you said, it's what I've been talking about with the Royals last year actually tried, and holy crap, it turns out trying gets you to the playoffs when no one else is, and that's why I'm hoping the Royals will continue to try this year, because I think they can make the playoffs again with just, a moderate amount of effort. Last year, not even as much as they had last year, honestly, because really I'm asking for one big signing after a trade. Last year, it was several big signings And I'm
Mm-hmm.
just saying one trade, one signing, and then fill in some holes and see what happens. But yeah, so we'll see. Probably not a lot of deals going to get done this week.
Probably not.
But we'll have to see what happens. I was sure that the whole AL Central, everyone was sure that the whole AL Central was going to be a disaster last year, and it ended up
Mm-hmm.
fielding three of the playoff teams. Two wild card teams came out of the AL Central, and the Twins barely missed. And of course, they were
Mm-hmm.
the team everyone predicted to win the whole thing. So the AL Central, I expect it to not get too weak next year.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, everybody loses players, need to add players, but so far, there's a lot of offseason left to see if the Guardians are going to reallocate some of that money other places and what the other teams are going to do.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, we'll see what they do. You spoke about like not a whole lot of stuff's going to change right now. A close peer of mine, Mike Gillespie, over at Kings of Kaufman, he wrote about like the period of time that we're in right now, December 22nd through the 28th, right before New Year's. It's just like a dead period in Royals history. I know we have a fairly new front office, new expectations, new processes, et cetera, et cetera. But still, like no matter who has been in the seat, just hasn't been an active time for the team.
There are some things that change when you get new leadership, but there are things that also stay the same. And when you've got kind of a pattern of operation, that's the kind of thing that you'll try and kind of leave the same. Because, like, for example, when the team wants to make a trade or wants to sign a player, we say, "Oh, JJ Piccolo," but that's not just JJ Piccolo. A lot
True.
of people work on that stuff, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so JJ Piccolo may have taken over the front office, but if they have a standard of we take the last 2 weeks of the year off, or we spend the last 2 weeks of the year focusing in this area instead, and people are kind of used to that, then that is like where you're gonna stay as
Yeah.
much as possible, because you want people to be able to. I think if you are wanting to run a business where you want people to work for you, which I think that's every business
Yeah.
wants good people to work for them, then you want to make that a business where people feel like their time is respected. And so having kind of the ability to plan, like, what is my holiday season going to look like? Well, the same as it has for the last 20 years, no matter who the general manager is, that's the thing that you want to keep unless you have a very compelling reason not to.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's like at any of our jobs, if we got a new CEO, we wouldn't expect them to immediately overhaul our vacation policies, or immediately, like, for example, the place I work, we get the week between Christmas and New Year's off. If we had a new CEO come in, I wouldn't expect to immediately lose that. You would have a transition period at the very least, and again, you would want to have a very good reason for why you were doing that.
Yeah. Absolutely. So Jeremy, I want to move on, and you know me, you kind of roll your eyes at me sometimes for my transitions and things like that. I try to keep it professional around here. I
Sure.
really, really do. One thing that I don't want to beat around the bush about, baseball lost one of its
Oh gosh, yeah.
most what it's one of its most what's the word I'm looking for?
Charismatic,
Yeah, like
talented,
yeah, both of those
famous.
words. Yeah, all three of those words work very well to describe Ricky Henderson, who, man, just one of the great players of his era. He passed
One of the
away this
greatest
weekend.
players of any era.
Yeah,
Let's not specify this too much, because generally speaking, Ricky Henderson was one of the best ever.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it's not hyperbole to say that in his case.
It's insane to me that he had a 25-year career. Like, he had a long, long baseball career, and he was doing it at a high level for the majority of it at an absolute Hall of Fame career. This is just a sad time for athletics
Extremely
fans.
sad. I remember watching Ricky play when I was a kid. Like, he's not one of these old guys that I've never heard of. This is
Hmm.
a guy I watched play a lot, because he played for so many different teams. He was a leadoff hitter, and he was talented into his fees. He was still playing well. It's and stats, I mean, speak for themselves. No one is likely to ever break his single season stolen base record, his single season or his career stolen base record. The dude was an on base machine. He was a batting average machine. He also had plenty of power. We think about,
Yeah.
back in his day, the leadoff guys were fast and they were light hitters. Not Ricky. Ricky had 81 leadoff home runs, which is the record in baseball. May never fall unless Kyle Schwarber does a lot more. And he had almost 300 home runs in his career to go with all the hitting he did. We talked about Ichiro Suzuki, and I said he's a surefire Hall of Famer. I don't care if he's unanimous, whatever. But Ricky Henderson was Ichiro Suzuki, but better, right? He stole more bases. He got on base more often. He hit for more power.
Yeah.
I saw a quote while I was reading articles about him that was, you could split Ricky Henderson in two, and you'd have two Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
He was people talk about, Babe Ruth or Hank Aaron. Ricky Henderson should like, if you're making what's that four-faced mountain thing?
Mount Rushmore.
If you're making a baseball Mount Rushmore, Ricky Henderson might deserve to be on that thing.
Right,
Okay,
does.
he certainly has a strong argument in his favor. It's extremely sad. 65 years old, very active. One of my favorite stories. I have to tell you my favorite Ricky Henderson story, Jake.
Let's hear it.
And this is not going to surprise anyone who knows me, and probably not anyone who knows Ricky. But this is a story that Craig Calcaterra always writes about when it comes to postseason shares splitting time, is that every team Ricky Henderson was on when they were doing their postseason shares, and he won 2 World Series, by the way, one with the Athletics, one with the Blue Jays. Anybody who came up for vote, he voted for them to get a full share. Now, for those of you who don't know how this works, the players all get a share. Everyone who's on the playoff roster gets a share, and then you start voting for, minor league guys that spend a few days with the team, clubbies, people around the team who aren't maybe necessarily directly contributing to the winning, and you vote for, do they get a cash bonus? Do they get a partial share? Do they get a full share? And then once you decide how many shares you have and how much money you get, you split that all up. And he would vote for everyone, every single minor league player, every single clubhouse attendant to get full shares. And people were like, why? And he says, you can change someone's life. The dude, he knew how lucky he was. He knew that he had money, he had enough money, and he wanted to better the lives of those around him. And that's just one simple way in which, we well, I'm not going to go into all that. I'll just focus on Ricky here. Just a
Yes, please.
great person who
Yes.
who played baseball the right way, who played hard, who had a lot of charisma, who he showed off a little bit, but he had the talent to back it up,
Yeah.
and was just, by all accounts, great to the people around him.
Absolutely. I know there are several tributes out there. We've heard from several different MLB teams and ownerships. Where I will editorialize this a little bit, Jeremy, is I do feel bad for Athletics fans because they don't have a place to go and like mourn or remember Ricky's playing time with the Athletics right now because the Coliseum's gone.
It
And
got
like that,
demolished?
no, no, but they're not gonna go and play baseball at you're not gonna go and have like an opening day tribute to Ricky Henderson in Oakland Coliseum
Well, you
because
might in Sacramento if you want to go all the way out there.
it's not the same, and
No, you're right.
You know it.
No, I said that with a smile on my face, very like,
Yes.
yeah, that's a great idea. I definitely want to do that.
um, yeah, it's just sad, and like I know if Royals fans were in the same situation, and people that saw a player of that caliber play for your team, you would want to feel that connection, and you would want to remember that memory in the place
I
where they did most of that.
I mean, it reminds me of when Yordano Ventura passed, and some Royals players went out to Coffin, and some fans just went out there, all just to like be together, remembering him.
Yeah, it's baseball brings us all together. It really does.
That's when it pushes us apart.
Yes, except it's so weird. Like baseball will push us together. It'll push us so close together. That's when we start like splitting apart a little bit. We start coming out of the edges a little bit. But if you want to come closer to Royals fans, you can do so over at royalsreview.com. Down in the comment section, you could read more about the Royals. You can write your own fan posts, all that and more. over at royalsreview.com. Jeremy, some late breaking news that I haven't had a chance to text you about. Will Myers, the former Royals top prospect, has called it quits on his playing
Wow.
career. Yep. He just put out today, quote, "I've had a great career. I loved what I did. Made a lot of good friends. I have no regrets." He just turned 34. He's had a pretty good statistical season. Overall, he's been an above average batter at the show. I know he never really reached that level that people expected, but he was a good ball player.
I just pulled up his numbers. He played for 11 years, which is pretty impressive,
It is, yeah.
but he only played 4 full seasons.
Wow. Yikes.
Well, 2020 he played 55 games, 5 full seasons with an asterisk, I guess. In 2022 he was still pretty good. He was still decent at least. Mediocre. Well, he hit 103 WRC plus, and he was a decent runner. But things fell off hard in 2023, and he didn't play all in the big leagues last year.
No, he did not. He was that's one of the reasons that he did cite his retirement is he's been dealing with some shoulder problems. And if we're sitting here in December 2024 and you're still like that's still an issue,
Yeah,
you're
for
hitting your
sure.
mid-30s, you just it's good to call it at that point. So all in all, I know he didn't play a single day for the Kansas City Royals, but Will Myers was, I mean, he undoubtedly had a role in bringing that World Series and two
Fans
pennants.
fans who watched the 2013 and 2014 Royals will always remember his name.
Yep, exactly. Congrats to Will. Wish you the best of luck in your post playing days, and can't wait to see what you do next. Speaking of a guy we can't wait to see what he does next, Michael Lorenzen.
Hmm.
Let's talk about him for a little bit.
For
So,
some reason, I was sure you were going to say Santa Claus. I do not know why.
hey, I mean, if I had said it at any time, it would be on the Sunday podcast ahead of Christmas. Which, by the way, if you're expecting an episode from us coming out Thursday morning, you will be sorely mistaken. We are not recording on Christmas Day. All right, that is we're going to be spending time with our
I
family.
mean, here's what I'll tell you all. If the Royals sign Teoscar Hernandez on Christmas Day, I will, if I can't get Jacob, I will put out an emergency 10-minute podcast about that.
I like it. I would love that to happen. Actually, Jeremy, I will say.
But that it's going to take something like that to get me to record on Christmas instead of spending. Well, mostly it's going to take something like that to get me to give me enough of an excuse to get away from my family to record on Christmas.
Exactly. It's gonna take a lot. It really is. But Teoscar Hernandez would be a lot. So Lorenzen, this is a guy who I've advocated for coming back to the Royals. I think he fits the need. I think we looked at some of his advanced numbers and we know that he wasn't perfect for the Royals, but I mean like he's a pretty good swing guy. And he should be in the Royals price range. Andy Rogers has talked about it. Several people have said that they support Lorenzen coming back to Kansas City. Now, apparently, the Athletics' Ken Rosenthal has reported that Lorenzen is being marketed to teams as a two-way player to try and get around the MLB imposed roster limit on pitchers. If you didn't know this, Lorenzen does have experience at the plate, but he has not had more than one plate appearance in a season since 2019. It has been a while. Okay. And I know he's athletic. He is definitely big even for pitchers standards. Like he's built, but I just think this is so strange. Like Rosenthal, I'm just going to read off directly what he said. So, quote, "The idea conceived by Lorenzen and his agent could make the pitcher a free agent fit for non-contenders such as the Chicago White Sox and Miami Marlins and a coveted trade target later." I I just don't see, like, come on, you're valuable as a pitcher. You're not trying to force your way onto the roster or nothing. You're good.
Well, the thing about being a two-way player is that if he plays 20 games and gets 3 at bats in those games, at least 20 games where he has 3 at bats, then he qualifies as a two-way player. And that means he does not count against their pitcher roster limits. Everybody is limited to 13 pitchers on their roster, but two-way players do not count against that 13 limit. So that's what he's pitching here is if you can afford to throw away 60 at bats on your season, then you can have 14 pitchers on your roster. Um,
Okay.
and so that might appeal to teams, but I do think he's going to get enough interest for again, that's going to be a non-competitive team, a team that can afford to throw away 60 at bats. I do think he's got enough pitching talent that he will probably get paid to just pitch for somebody.
And from an on-field perspective, I think that would be the smarter move. But this is, I guess, playing the long game from a front office perspective.
I mean, it makes you throw that out there as an agent and you're like, hey, here's an option. And maybe that drives the bidding up a little bit because
Maybe.
now one of the non-contending teams says, "Oh, well, we'll give him 5 million," and one of your contending teams was only offering 4. Now they got to go to 5.5. So
Yeah.
you just made your client $1.5 million by talking about something that's not gonna work in a reasonable way.
Yeah. I I don't know. We'll see what happens. It is, I don't know. It's just kind of a, this is more indicative of how quiet, of how slow things
Yeah,
are in
a little bit.
baseball right now.
Well, and also like the fact that Michael Lorenzen played for the Royals. I don't know that we'd be aware of this if he
Probably
hadn't.
not. Probably not. I do think it is interesting that we know about it at all. I mean, Michael Lorenzen is valuable. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like he's a top flight pitcher.
I do have to say that I kind of threw this out there 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
in 2023 when Nate Eaton pitched in relief and was allowed to like actually pitch. A lot of position players just have to lob the ball up there. Their team says you can't actually pitch. Nate Eaton was
Mm-hmm.
allowed to actually pitch, and he threw some pretty good pitches. And I said, what if he has value as a utility player who was also a reliever?
Yeah.
Because he offers speed, he offers defense, and if he could also pitch some innings for you, that would give you even more flexibility on your roster. The Royals chose not to explore that avenue, unfortunately for me, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen sometime in the future. I don't know. It might take another player or two coming up as two-way players, such as maybe a Jack Caglione,
Yeah, maybe.
before I think teams would really consider that possibility.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it would be a smart thing for some teams to consider because a lot of these guys have pitched in their careers, whether in the minors, whether in college, whether in high school. You know, they've got, if you're athletic enough to be in the MLB, excuse me, to be in MLB, you probably are athletic enough that you pitched for some team, and a lot of those guys, if they could pitch, they would be pitching. But some of them, you know, maybe they're a pitcher who can hit a little bit, like a Zach Greinke,
Yeah.
or maybe they're a hitter who can pitch a little bit. And then you can have someone to shut down, you know, those blowout games without having to use one of your real bullpen arms. Just some thoughts. Just the teams are always looking for that extra speck of value, and I feel like this is an area that they will eventually dig in.
Yeah, possibly so. Ever since the MLB imposed those restrictions that you detailed on a little bit, Jeremy, only Otani has been under that exemption. So that's what, 4 seasons, and only one player has ever been in that position. It is certainly rare, but I do want to say Lorenzen does have more batting success than I was expecting. He does have a career 710 OPS at the plate. He does have 7 home runs across 147 plate appearances. Like that's a pretty good rate, especially for a pitcher. Now, of course, that he hasn't had much experience since he hasn't had any since
I mean,
2021.
he's got 133 at bats in his career.
Yeah.
So we're talking small sample size. Also, 4 of those 7 home runs came in one season, which feels like it was probably kind of fluky.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. Well, and he was also playing for the Cincinnati Reds, who notoriously have a home run
Yeah.
friendly park there.
And he was 26, so he was
Yeah,
kind of entering his prime as a hitter. He's going to be 33 next year.
exactly.
Um,
So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. And one thing that I don't believe we've explicitly said, Jeremy, that needs to be laid out specifically, if they fall into those parameters that you laid out, that status as them being exempt will transition to any team that he is traded to. So let's
of
say
course, yeah.
he
It's
fills
it's
the parameters for
attached
the
to the player, not the team, yeah.
correct. Yep, that's what needed to be said. So that's why
Which
maybe they
also makes him more valuable as a trade piece
right.
if you're on a non-contending team, because then somebody can say, "Oh, man, we had so many pitching problems and we don't really use our bench. The Dodgers can trade for him."
Yeah, precisely. So it'll be something interesting to keep an eye on. Jeremy, I want us to go ahead and talk about your piece this weekend up on royalsreview.com. If you haven't had a chance to go check it out, Jeremy has a new column every single Saturday that comes out. This past Saturday, you talked about Baseball Savant's new base running stats and how they affect the Kansas City Royals. Can you give us the gist?
Yeah, so Baseball Savant just has a bunch of they're coming out with new stats all the time, which is really cool. Like last year, in the middle of the season, I think we probably talked about this on the podcast. They started giving us the swing speed stats, which told us things like Luis Arias. Well, why does he never strike out? Well, because he swings the bat slower, so because he's focusing on controlling his swing, not on hitting the ball hard. And then he still swings it hard enough to get singles, but he's not going to hit a lot of home runs. Whereas Giancarlo Stanton swings the bat faster than anybody else, which is why he swings and misses a lot, but also why when he does hit the ball, it goes a long, long way. So then in their final update of the year, as we head into the Christmas season, the holiday season, they dropped some base running stats on us, which I thought were really interesting. Primarily, what's interesting to me is the net bases gained stat, which attempts to tell you something about, we know, like, we count the number of stolen bases, but this counts your stolen bases. It also tries, I think somewhere in here, it's got some stats about, it's also got the bases gained versus average, which includes, oh no, those are just stolen bases in box. So this is not like taking an extra base. This is only stolen base stuff.
Yes.
Um, and so the net bases gained was just a cool stat to take a look at and be like, okay, we know Bobby Witt Jr. got picked off more than we wanted him to last year. Was that enough to make him a below average runner? The answer is no. He's still well above average, but it was enough to make him the third best base runner on his team, third best stealing runner on his team. Dairon Blanco, I think, obviously is pretty high up there, but he's only the second best because he and some people have argued, oh well, that just shows he should be getting more playing time. And my argument to that is, well, that would just make him into our number one base runner on here, who is Maikel Garcia, a guy who runs the bases extremely well. Like, Maikel Garcia is top 10 in all of MLB in a lot of these stats. But Blanco would, if you gave him more bats, would have the same problem Garcia had last year of not getting on base, and you can't use your speed. You can't steal first, as they say. So, at least not yet. That rule change is still being worked on. I just thought it was really cool to be like, hey, look, Maikel Garcia actually was pretty valuable. And I thought, I looked at it and I think, man, Maikel Garcia and Dairon Blanco both being on the bench could be huge weapons for this team. I know Garcia's not as fast as some of these guys. He's certainly not as fast as either Blanco or Witt, but he's so good at stealing the bases that it doesn't matter. He's fast enough to use his talents. So being able to just put him on base and then let him defend late in games in a Gerard Dyson role, except on the infield, I think could be very beneficial for the Royals.
Yeah,
It, it,
absolutely.
it kind of, mostly in terms of the Royals, at least for me, it confirms what my eyes were telling me. That Bobby Witt
Gotcha.
Jr. was an above average runner, but not as above average as we would have liked. That Dairon Blanco was insane, and that Maikel Garcia was just as insane.
Yeah, no doubt. And I definitely think if you spoke to a casual fan sitting in the stands at Kauffman Stadium, people know about Dairon Blanco's value on this team. Maikel Garcia's might have been a little overshadowed. So this is an interesting way to present it and to inform fans a little bit more. I do also think this is interesting to go back and look at some former Royals because they they have compiled this across several seasons. It
Yeah, it
isn't
goes back to
just 2024.
2016, which means it stops right before the seasons I really wanted to look at.
I know, right? Man, could you have imagined where Terrence Gore and Gerard Dyson would have ranked
Yeah.
among
Gerard
these?
Dyson, shows up in 2016, obviously,
Oh, yes, that's
and,
true.
it's not where he was well, he's approximately, um, I believe he was just a little bit he was basically Dairon Blanco on the bases in 2016, but I think he was even better in 2015 and 2014, and I would love to be able to have confirmed that.
That would have been great. Former Royals that I'm looking at, such as like when you look at the most valuable all around base runners of the Statcast era, Whit Merrifield, he's inside the
Yeah.
top 10 there, which was surprising. Then also on the individual base stealing seasons, I was expecting, maybe Bobby Witt Jr. from 2023 would pop up, maybe Maikel Garcia even from this past year would pop up, but it was actually Alberto Mondesi from 2019. His season there where he was worth 31 net bases gained, ranked 11th on the leaderboard, which was surprising. So I thought it was cool seeing those folks. This is certainly something that I want to learn a little bit more about and start applying it more because
The
go ahead.
I was just gonna say the stat itself is really cool. One of the articles that came out afterwards, or at least it was a Blue Sky thread, was how do Jose Caballero and the polar bear, Pete Alonso, both have 0 bases, um,
Yeah.
0 net bases gained.
Hmm.
And the answer is Caballero, yeah, he steals a lot of bases, but he gets caught a lot.
There you go.
And Pete Alonso doesn't steal bases that much, but he doesn't get caught. So they ended up, being even. And so that's we've talked people I think at this point are pretty familiar with the 80% rule of if you don't succeed at least 80% of the time while stealing bases, you're costing your team. And so this is another way to look at that of like, okay, but it includes things like balks and which is a thing that the runner usually is probably encouraging a little bit and wild pitches and such.
Yeah. Yep. 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 Oh, this is I don't know. I think what I'm looking forward to most is this new leaderboard that they put out is also showing us things such as lead distance. There's we can always point to a player's sprint speed as their max speed. Well, who's being more aggressive and who has a better um, success rate when they are aggressive when they have that aggressive lead. Those are some of the more minute things that I'm going to be looking for across this off season. So
One
that might be
thing
something that I write up about.
One thing I did notice about the leads while I was looking at this last season's stats is that Bobby Witt Jr. did not take big leads. He was
Yeah, he
letting his
did.
speed do the work, and he still got picked off a fair amount.
Hmm.
So I have heard rumors somewhere, I think probably from Annie Rogers' newsletter, that he is working on his base running this offseason. And I think it was Lesky wrote in his newsletter that Bobby Witt went into one offseason with a horrible reputation defensively from the previous year and came back and was a stud the next year and has maintained that. It's kind of the same thing we've seen with Patrick Mahomes on the football side of like you go into the offseason with a known flaw and you work on that flaw and you fix it. And I hopefully we're going to see Bobby Witt Jr. do that, and then maybe he'll steal 60, 70 bases next year.
Hey, that'd be nice. I'll take a 30-70 season for the Kansas City Royals. Before we get to today's Royals reviews, I do want to shout out Annie Rogers once again for her newsletter. She had a great chat with Chris Bubich, who is very much going to be transitioning back into the rotation, back as a starter, but him talking about, excuse me, what's going to be different. What is he going to take from his experience in the bullpen? And what is his mindset at this point in 2024? So you can go subscribe to her newsletter, or I think it's up on the Royals site right now, MLB.com/Royals. Jeremy, what do you say we get to some reviews, huh?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, sounds like a plan. Do you mind starting us off again?
No problem.
All right, what you got?
So first, I do want to mention I don't think I've remembered to mention this on any of the podcasts since I put it up. I do have a new post on my personal blog, Royals as Deadpool and Wolverine cameos, which, funnily enough, Jacob has a cameo in there, so
No
you all should
way.
check that out. My favorite one, the first one I thought of was 2014 Raul Ibanez as Wesley Snipes as Blade, in which, he used to be great, but now it looks like he's probably too old to still be doing this. And so that was the same impression I got watching 2014 and Raul Ibanez play for the Royals and watching Wesley Snipes cameo in that movie. So there's a whole bunch of other ones in there. I had a lot of fun putting it together. If you're interested in that kind of silliness, go check that out. So then my review, I'm planning to watch a lot of movies while I'm on vacation so that I have lots of things to talk about. I'm hopefully this week going to watch the Brett documentary so that I can write about it for this weekend.
Okay.
Now that I have access to MLB Network, they gave us the MLB.TV subscribers got MLB Network subscription access in the middle of the season, and I couldn't figure out how to watch the Brett documentary. And then I did find it a couple weeks ago, but I haven't had time. So hopefully I can find it again. Because I do want to watch that and hopefully write about it for Royals Review. And then, but the thing I will review for now, because I haven't gotten to any of those movies yet, is the mobile game I've been playing recently, which is, you're not going to believe this,
Oh, let's
is
hear it.
the Microsoft Solitaire collection.
Really? What?
Yeah, so just randomly last week, I was like, what used to be so much fun when I was bored at my computer was playing solitaire. And then Klondike solitaire, and when you won, the cards would fall and bounce across the screen.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wonder if that's still a thing. And it is. Oh, there's a lot more going on now, though. It's now not just solitaire, it's the Microsoft Solitaire collection. It has Klondike, it has Pyramid, it has a Spider, it has Free Cell, and one more, Tri-Peaks.
Okay.
And then it's got like daily, I'm hooked on daily quests
Oh, yes.
and daily challenges and all kinds of fun. And it's just like, yeah, let's just play a real quick game of solitaire, varying difficulties, varying types of solitaire. And I have been unable to put my phone down since I realized I downloaded it on my computer, and then I was like, oh, there's a mobile version also. I know what is going to absorb my life for the next month at least.
I love it. You have a lot of unexpected reviews, Jeremy. I certainly was not expecting that one.
I don't think I was either. I think I was like, I'll play solitaire, like I don't watch the cards bounce, and I'll be like, yeah, that was fun, good nostalgia. And then I was like, no, I must play this forever.
I remember we restarted watching The Office with the super fan edition on Peacock, wherever the heck it is, and Pam was playing old school solitaire on her computer one day, and I was like, wow, I've not thought about that in a long, long time.
Yeah.
My review this week is thanks to my brother-in-law, John, who gifted me a bottle of Buffalo Trace bourbon whiskey at Thanksgiving, and I just finished off that bottle. I very much enjoyed it. I know Buffalo Trace is more of a well-known whiskey. It's not like a small-time distillery or nothing like that. I've driven past it several times when I've gone back to Kansas. It's won a ton of awards just this year. All in all, it's not a harsh whiskey. It's very smooth. I enjoyed the flavor, and it's very, what's the word? It's very affordable as well. So make sure you go check out Buffalo Trace Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey at your local liquor store. All right, Jeremy, let's go ahead and get on out of here. Do you have anything else to say before we go on a break for Christmas?
Nope. I'm ready for a break. Let's have a break.
All right, we will certainly have a break. If you want to follow along with us on social media, you can follow Royals Review on Facebook, Twitter, and Blue Sky. You can follow the podcast on Twitter, or you can just follow us on Blue Sky. All of those links are down in the podcast description below. Genuinely, if you have any questions you want us to answer about the Royals, anything you're curious about, my email is down in the description. I know that's not wise sometimes, but I'm just putting it out there. Let's see
Hey,
what
my
happens.
email is also on my Blue Sky account, so
Oh, perfect. There you go. There you go. You have multiple ways you can reach out to us. But I am Jacob Milham. They are Jeremy Greco. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, go Royals.
ho, ho! Merry Christmas!